If you believe that depression is just an act that manipulative people put on to get attention, this video is not for you. I respect your right to have an opinion, but please, click off now. If you don't believe that depression is real, this video is not for you. I respect your right to have an opinion, but please, click off now. If you believe that everyone has stress and only weak people get depressed over it, this video is not for you. I respect your right to have an opinion, but please, click off now. To everybody that's still choosing to watch, I made this video for you. The vast majority of people have mental stress. Stress is so common in 2019 that mental health has become the most discussed global health issue. Stress caused by illness, stress caused by economic instability, stress caused by relationships, stress caused by desires. But stress is not depression. Mental stress affects most people by producing significant hormonal changes within their bodies. This response to stress is commonly called the fight or flight response. This fight or flight response could be described as a temporary life preservation mode. Heartbeat, blood pressure and breathing rate all increase. Sight, hearing and senses in general become sharper. And core functioning improves through the increased metabolism of nutrients stored in the body. But stress is not depression. Actions taken while in this life preservation mode can sometimes fail to deliver or can even work against long-term outcomes, because all the stressed person's immediately available mental and physical resources are focused on overcoming the short-term stress, at the expense of focus on any long-term needs, desires or plans. However, because of the human body's relatively short potential to maintain this fight or flight response, in most people, stress basically triggers a mechanism that ultimately results in short-term purposeful action. But stress is not depression. Most people see accepting and taking on stress as a part of their daily life, a part of their job, or a part of their relationships. They pride themselves on their ability to cope with stress. They plan in advance for the long-term mental shortcomings during stressful periods, using notes and spreadsheets and the like, and they can even feel excited about new forms of stress. But stress is not depression. The word stress could be interchanged with the phrase urgent motivation. The word stress could be interchanged with the phrase immediate source of focus. Stress is often referred to as good or necessary. The positive benefits produced when overcoming stress are so great that many people, especially competitive business and sports people, actively chase to stay in this zone as often as possible, achieving seemingly impossible tasks and occasionally becoming defined as adrenaline junkies. But stress is not depression. Depression does not deliver a fight or flight response. Depression does closer to the opposite of that. Depression focuses a mind on the future, usually resulting in inaction in the present. Mental stress can lead to depression, and a person suffering from depression can still become stressed. But depression and stress are not the same, because depression does not have the positive hormonal balancing component associated with stress. It's easy to tell when a person has become depressed. A depressed person's greatest difficulty is being able to focus routinely on short-term problems, and the first thing to suffer will be their normal daily routine. In the same way, a person who becomes stressed one particular morning by being locked out of their garage and needing to find a logical solution might not even think about their long-term need to post the important letter in their jacket until reminded. A person who has become depressed by their long-term need for decent employment might not even think of their immediate need to eat, to sleep, to socialize, to look after their health, or even to be happy until reminded. Essential, short-term, repetitive actions that seem central to living a normal life for others are the first thing to be omitted from the lives of people suffering from depression. Depression can easily be defined as a near total mental and physical focus on medium and long-term outcomes at the expense of focus on short-term requirements, which the person suffering from depression perceives as relatively irrelevant. Depression is not an emotion. People suffering from depression are regularly emotionless. Depression can involve extreme temporary emotional sadness, but depression is a range of behaviours prompted by flawed logic, not simply an extreme negative emotional state. A person can be suffering from depression and yet be just as commonly temporarily happy as they are temporarily unhappy. The key word to appreciate, however, is temporarily. These temporary emotional changes are situational, not logical. They are immediate and spontaneous. Temporary happiness does not deliver an immediate return of focus onto the depressed person's short-term requirements, or offer any solution to the long-term issue causing the depression. The depressed person's logical reason for being depressed has not changed, just their immediate situation and their immediate emotion. A depressed person might laugh or they might cry, but a depressed person is fundamentally depressed. Depression is best explained as an individual's war of logic based around how they view themselves, view others, and how they believe others view them. This war of logic takes higher and higher priority amongst their thoughts until it becomes their predominant consideration. The seemingly toxic behaviours and the day-to-day avoidance of short-term issues often lead into self-harm, and commonly grouped together as depression, are almost always the result of this fundamental internal dispute. Depression is caused by inability to acceptably answer one very important question: who am I? The problem with seeking to cure depression is that any cure must deliver the person suffering from depression with an answer to this fundamentally and problematically unanswered question. Uncovering this answer is the only way a person suffering from depression will be able to remove this question from the top of their priorities, and thereby be able to move on to a more regular day-to-day life. However, this is obviously not obtainable through any pharmaceutical, and no psychiatrist will claim to know or offer to tell their patients who they are or who they should be. Tackling depression requires a structured rebuilding of logic and language that allows the person suffering from depression to address their questions about themselves with a new perspective. This, however, is where most psychotherapy and self-help methods fail. The core language of psychotherapy is littered with commonly used words that reinforce a mental environment that is directly obstructive to reaching a new perspective. The word you, for example, it can be used by anyone to mean anyone, just like the word I can be used by absolutely anyone when referring to themselves. These words are not personal to the depressed person. In fact, they are completely impersonal and not specific enough for the depressed person to value them highly. You can even be the name a depressed person uses for themselves when chastising and abusing themselves. The word me, however, is the opposite. It is completely personal. However, the word me is rarely said out loud and is usually reserved to requesting things, permissions, and opinions from other people. The context for the word me in therapy is normally based on satisfying somebody else's curiosity, their opinion, and not on actual facts. And as such, any definition of the word me is always incomplete and cannot be relied upon when answering the question, who am I? Myself goes into a group with other statements of ownership, like my health, my money, or my home. It describes things that I own, it is mine, but it is ultimately not me. Combine these types of linguistic barriers with a perpetuated disdain for individuals renaming themselves when attempting to create a fresh perspective of themselves, and it becomes clear that treatment by psychologists can itself be problematic, confusing, and eventually become the source of regression into even deeper depression. Solving depression is both simple and complex. It's simple because there's a straightforward and proven method that can be used to find the immediate and permanent answers to the question, who am I? and through those answers provide the clear mental space required to focus on the present as opposed to the future. But it is also complex because that same method requires the acceptance of answers to the question, who are you? The answers to the question, who are you, if not given an appropriate context, can result in remaining depression. But the method is not flawed, it does provide that context. If you or someone you know is suffering with depression, in the next video I'll be fully explaining this method of solving depression. So I hope that you will subscribe or share this video as appropriate, and leave a like on this video so that other people coping with depression will be more likely to find it. Thank you for listening.